In the darkened alleys of the East End, Catherine Eddowes made her way home alone. She was not particularly afraid now. Nothing had been heard from the killer in over 3 weeks. There was no way she could know that on this night, Elizabeth Stride had already been murdered. But apparently, because the killer was dissatisfied by some aspect of the act, he needed to murder again. Another example of the way his disturbed mind was working. He began arranging the few meager possessions of his victims in weird patterns at their feet. Was he, in some way, attempting to hint at his real identity? Stephen Knight authored a book on the historic murders.
The greatest clue of all was the only clue to be left by Jack the Ripper, and this was a message chalked on a wall near the fourth murder, that of Catherine Eddowes.
The hastily chalked message was cryptic and mysterious. Some believed it referred to a secret brotherhood called the Freemasons.
It had a very weird effect in that the Chief Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Charles Warren, as soon as he heard about the message, rushed to the East End and personally washed it off. This was incredible behavior. It was the only clue left by the Ripper, and he obliterated it. He never explained why.
Sir Charles Warren was one of the most influential Freemasons in England. Was there some Masonic clue in the message that motivated Sir Charles, who was also the police commissioner, to erase it? Did his own Masonic membership force him to do this? Was it evidence of some sort of cover-up?
Every profession in this country has members who belong to the Masonic order. It's very much connected with royalty. They are a secret order. Not very much of them is known. You only know if you talk to any ex-Mason. Because of its secrecy, it's a sworn, closed brotherhood that help each other in their own careers. At the same time, they help each other keep secrets in and out of their careers. And if you have a secret that you wish to be kept, it could not be in safer hands. They are sworn more to each other than they are to their wives and their families.
Freemasonry began in the Middle Ages with the establishment of construction guilds. The builders of some of Europe's most magnificent cathedrals, they surrounded themselves in an aura of mystery and religious symbolism, soon attracting followers from other arenas. Frederick the Great, King of Prussia, was a Freemason. Likewise, the first President of the United States, George Washington. Even the dollar bill, with its Masonic all-seeing eye of God, reflected how deeply the Masons had penetrated all levels of society. But the Honorable Earl of Carnarvon, Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England at the time of Jack the Ripper, was perhaps the most powerful Mason of all. Only he and a few other highly ranked Freemasons knew the true power of the secret organization.
The basic tenet of Freemasonry is secrecy, and to protect this, Freemasons say in their ritual that they will go to any lengths. Nobody is really expected to take this seriously. It is basically pantomime. For instance, in the first degree of Freemasonry, that of the entered apprentice, an initiate swears to have his throat cut from left to right if he betrays Masonic secrets. He also agrees to cut the throat of a fellow Mason from left to right if he betrays Masonic secrets. This is meant to be purely ritual and pantomime, but in the case of Jack the Ripper, a leading Freemason took the various brutal oaths of Masonry absolutely literally and carried them out.
Was Jack the Ripper a high-ranking Freemason? To find the answer, In Search Of cameras would have to explore the world of English royalty. The Whitechapel of today has changed in many ways since Jack the Ripper's murder spree in the fall of 1888. Street names have been altered, many of the old buildings demolished, and most of the murder sites have disappeared. The interest and fascination with Jack the Ripper lives on, however, despite the absence of most of the physical evidence, including files that were supposedly tucked safely away in the secure vaults of Scotland Yard. Dr. J.M. Cameron, chief pathologist of the Home Office, has dealt with the problem of these sketchy files while pursuing his own personal investigation.
I feel that any police officer nowadays would be disgusted with any of his juniors or the pathologist if they were to submit reports, as we are led to believe were submitted in the Jack the Ripper cases. There have been many views and passed as to who it could have been, whether he was a medical man or had medical knowledge, or whether they had any knowledge as to, say, a butcher or a fishmonger. There is no evidence in any of the photographs that I've seen of the victims which would lead me to believe that he was a doctor, because if he was, or if he were to be, he should have been struck off the medical register because of his technique. On reviewing all the cases, it is obvious that the majority of the assaults took place from behind. None were heard to scream other than one. This assault from behind is not uncommon even today, particularly by an impotent male using the knife as a phallic symbol.
Despite all of the theories filling the tabloids, the public was in no way prepared for the description of the killer's last murder. Marie Jeanette Kelly was killed inside her living quarters, and it was obvious to the police who found the body that the barbarity of this particularly vicious act far exceeded anything that Jack the Ripper had previously exhibited. How could the murders have been committed within potential view and earshot of so many people? What made it possible for the killer to escape so easily, especially with the police on alert in Whitechapel?
If it had been a person, a man, for instance, or a woman from that part of London, a working class person who lived in those overcrowded conditions, there's really little chance that he would have got away with it. A man roaming the streets covered in blood, going into a common lodging house, would have been seen by his fellow people. He would have been spotted by his own kind. If you think of it as being a middle-class person, then essentially you're up against the same problems, because the middle-class person would either have come from Whitechapel or the environs, or have come outside Whitechapel and would needed transport. They would have had to hire a hackney carriage, and a hackney carriage would have had a driver who would have seen a man covered in blood running away from the East End in a hurry. So we felt it was more than likely to be a moneyed person, an aristocrat, fairly high up in some sort of government, who had this ability to remain anonymous, this ability to run away in a hurry.
Nevertheless, Scotland Yard thought John Pizer, an obscure little man commonly called Leather Apron, was a possible suspect. Also on their list, Dr. Neil Cream and George Chapman, both professional murderers at large with a history of wife killing. Also, Montague Druitt, a ne'er-do-well lawyer and teacher, supposedly going insane, who came from a long line of medical doctors. And finally, the unstable Duke of Clarence, second in line to the throne, who was studying art in Whitechapel at the time of the crimes. Some theorize today that for the murderer to repeatedly escape, there probably was a conspiracy involving Buckingham Palace.